Hey, good morning, friends. Today, my friends, is Thursday, July the 17th, 2025, and the time now is 7:32 a.m. So, friends, I want to talk about Sierra Leone, and I want to talk briefly about the recent trip of Julius Maada, the president of Sierra Leone, to France. So, friends, for the past few days now, I have been researching on topics and events to talk about relating to Sierra Leone because I want to begin my first playlist, okay, or my first video of or about Sierra Leone. And for some reason, I couldn't find anything on the global news. However, one thing that I was able to come across was an article relating to a recent trip that the president of Sierra Leone, Julius Maada, took to France. It is very interesting the position of the author of the article, but the article to me seems more to be something full of rhetoric, and it is a politics article. It is a political charge or a political accusation or statement by an opponent or an insider within the party who basically despises what the president of Sierra Leone, Julius Maada, is doing. So it is a very interesting article. And my friends, as much as the article is basically politics, there are some things in the article that seem to be echoing some form of Pan-Africanism and the current state of African affairs, especially relating to the situation in the Sahel region, the revolution in the Sahel region, of which Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and Chad are all part of. And many Africans will agree that these countries are right now leading an African renaissance. As the author, okay, of this article seems to be declaring or declares in the article. It is very interesting. This article, as much as it is politics within a country, you have one person of a party, whether it is an opposition party or the party of the president, that is basically expressing his or her discontent of the president's activity. It is also based on an international geopolitical or diplomatic trip that the president of Sierra Leone, Julius Maada, took recently. The article is actually dated June 26 of this year, 2025. But because of something that is often strong in Sierra Leonean culture, a very specific and important holiday in Sierra Leone, perhaps that could have been the result of the Pan-Africanist fervor that the author of this article seemed to express. So in Sierra Leone, there is a famous holiday, June 16, which is the Day of the African Child, which basically celebrates the strength, the power, the talent of African children, and also it remembers the June 16 massacre in South Africa of black children. So it is a very important holiday where in Sierra Leone on the street you have those street boys, those Rasta man, those guys who are knowledgeable. We talk about black pride, African pride, and basically bettering African people and unifying African people, as the author of this article basically stressed. So my friends, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this article and then I'm going to end. It is a very short article. It is a political charge or political accusation with some form of Pan-Africanist fervor within the article. So friends, here I go. So the article's title is Maada is selling Sierra Leone back into chain. A new era of colonial slavery under the mask of diplomacy. That is a very big charge, a very interesting title for this article. It is a big charge. Once again, I'm going to read the article's title. Maada is selling Sierra Leone back into chain. What does that mean, back into chain? Basically, selling the country back into slavery. Maada is selling Sierra Leone back into chains. A new era of colonial slavery under the mask of diplomacy. And diplomacy is in quotation. Now, this article is in the newspaper or the online publication, Cocorico, with the slogan, "The Voice of the People." So Cocorico in Africa or Sierra Leone is kind of like what the chicken does in the morning when the chicken is crowing in the morning. In the West, people might say cocodoodle-doo, but in Sierra Leone, it says Cocorico. Okay, early in the morning, the chicken, the hens and the rooster will be crowing, Cocorico, and all that sort of things. So once again, the publication, the article's origin, the source is Cocorico with the slogan, "The Voice of the People." I'm going to continue. Once again, the article's title, Maada is selling Sierra Leone back into chains. A new era of colonial slavery under the mask of diplomacy, in quotation. And the author of the article is Koma Tonkalili, Secretary General of APC Australia Branch. So there is a political party in Sierra Leone, which is APC. And there are Sierra Leoneans in Australia, so perhaps this is the branch, okay? I tried to research them, but I couldn't find anything online, like a site for this group. So it reads, once again, Maada is selling Sierra Leone back into chains, a new era of colonial slavery under the mask of diplomacy, in quotation. Maada's presence in France, meeting with Emmanuel Macron, the face of modern day imperialism, is not just shameful, it is treason of the highest order. I don't know why that is treason. Once again, this is political allegation. Continue. This visit is not diplomacy, it is submission, it is capitulation. It is the act of a man willing to trade the soul of his country for a briefcase of heroes and a smile from his colonial masters. Let this be clear, Maada is a disgrace to the African Renaissance. Now my friends, I don't know why Maada is a disgrace, as the author of this article is stressing. However, one thing I want to stress is that at the time when Africa is experiencing revolution, I do believe leaders such as Maada need to be very careful for his reputation and also his safety. This is because I remember 1992 with the coup in Sierra Leone. Maada Strasser and those guys basically led the coup in Sierra Leone. Perhaps, who knows, with what is happening in Sierra Leone, history could be repeating itself. Could be possible because the African people are angry. Let this be clear, Maada is a disgrace to the African Renaissance. While revolutionary leaders in Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger have heroically cut the chain of French domination, choosing dignity over aid, sovereignty over slavery, Maada is kneeling at the feet of the very empire that has ravaged our continent for generations. That's a very strong line. While Africa is waking up, Bio is fast asleep in the lap of the French neocolonialism. That's a very strong line. This paragraph is interesting. It is a very good political rhetoric here. When Macron's envoy visited State House in this case will be like the French executive mansion or the American White House. Once again, I'm going to continue. When Macron's envoy visited State House, I want Sierra Leone and the world. Macron has found a new puppet. I was right. Now Bio is in France like a loyal errand boy, not to uplift Sierra Leone, but to betray it again. I don't know how he betrayed Sierra Leone the first time. This is not just incompetence. This is strategic sabotage. Perhaps it could be. He has bankrupted Sierra Leone's economy. He has politicized every institution. He has militarized the street against peaceful citizens. He has looted the treasury dry with a criminal cabinet. And now he seeks to invite the empire back in through the front door, shaking hands with the very people whose fingerprints are on the blood of millions of Africans. Wow. Maada is not just a bad leader. He is a curse on Sierra Leone, a man with no vision, no backbone, and no loyalty to the black race. That's a very big allegation. I'm going to read that again. Maada is not just a bad leader. Why is he a bad leader? He is a curse on Sierra Leone, a man with no vision, no backbone, and no loyalty to the black race. That's kind of like some Pan-Africanist statement. No backbone. We need African leaders with backbone to stand up for Africa. But without loyalty to the black race or to the African people, it's a very interesting thing what this person is saying here. We are seeing a form of loyalty or a call for loyalty and unity within the African diaspora, not just those from the continent, but those Africans who were taken out of the continent, their descendants are calling for repatriation and unification with the continent. So that is very interesting. It seems that this person is coming from that point of view. So I'm going to continue once again. Maada is not just a bad leader. He is a curse on Sierra Leone, a man with no vision, no backbone, and no loyalty to the black race. Let the people of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger take note. Bio is aligning with your enemies. That's very interesting. Perhaps it could be. We know Ivory Coast to have sold the rest of Africa, and Ivory Coast have been basically pointed out to be one of the country or the leading country which the French have used to basically infiltrate the rest of Africa, West Africa, basically trying to sabotage what is happening in the Sahel. So that is very interesting. I'm going to continue again. Let the people of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger take note. Bio is aligning with your enemies. Watch him closely. Follow his trail. Macron didn't invite him for a handshake. He summoned him like a servant to plot, plan, and perhaps to poison the African revolution from within. That's very interesting. Some of our leaders are our very enemies in Africa. Or perhaps I can say that some of our people are the enemies of African revolution, African dignity, and African progress. What deals is Bio signing? What promises is he making? Is he offering Sierra Leone's resources in exchange for French military aid? Is he begging to be France's point man to destabilize West Africa? To divide us again like they did with borders, languages, and coups? That is a strong line. That is some revolutionary line. Maada will go down in history, not as a president, but as a traitor in the bloodline of colonial collaborators. He is the reincarnation of those who sold their brothers into slavery for mirrors and musket. Today he does it for handshakes and hotel suite in Paris. That's a big allegation. And to an extent, there is a truth to that, not relating to Maada, but what the rest of Africa, what African leaders have done. So just being in Western countries, capitals, or big cities, looking important has been like a trend for many African leaders, which many Africans despise. Maada will go down in history, not as a president, but as a traitor in the bloodline of colonial collaborators. He is the reincarnation of those who sold their brothers into slavery for mirrors and musket. Today he does it for handshakes and hotel suites in Paris. So the whole idea of selling your brothers into slavery for mirror and musket is kind of like what the allegation says, that many Africans were selling other Africans into slavery. I do believe that there is a lot to how Africans were basically procured, sold into slavery. It is not just about mirror and musket, but also there were inter-tribe situations, there were tribalism going on, tribal warfare. So perhaps an African tribe selling another African tribes, it's their enemy, So a lot of things that we basically hold strongly today did not exist back then. Just like today we see Europeans presenting or promoting themselves as a unified front. Historians will say, and history has it, that Europeans have been fighting and killing each other for centuries now. That is the history that we learn in school, even though they try to whitewash it and basically beautify it and make it into Hollywood movies and so on. I'm going to continue, friends. We must speak boldly and without apology. Bill is setting Sierra Leone on a path of 1,000 years of suffering. I don't know where you get that from. A path of 1,000 years of suffering. Why not 2,000? Why not 100 years? So it is interesting. I'm going to read that again. Bill is setting Sierra Leone on a path of 1,000 years of suffering, a future of debt, dependence, humiliation, and betrayal. He is mortgaging our children's future for personal gains. And we say, never again. The youth of Sierra Leone must rise. Friends, I also think not just Sierra Leone, not just Liberia, Ivory Coast, South Africa, Sudan, Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Congo, and so on, Morocco, and so on. I think the youth of Africa, period, must rise and will rise. I'm going to read that again. Bill is setting Sierra Leone on a path of 1,000 years of suffering, a future of debt, dependence, humiliation, and betrayal. He is mortgaging our children's future for personal gain. And we say never again. The youth of Sierra Leone must rise. The patriots of West Africa must unite. Bill's treachery cannot continue under silence. Let the world know. We reject imperialism. We reject puppets. We reject Bill. By Thomas Tonkalili, Secretary General, APC Australia Branch. That is very interesting. It is a very interesting article. But friends, for Sierra Leone, it is like any other African country or countries. We have a situation where our people were taken out of the continent and sold into slavery. Whether we are talking about the transatlantic slavery or the Arab slavery of the East African region. We have neocolonialism and colonialism, okay? Yes, we can argue that we are independent countries, but we did not win that independence because we are still dependent on the West and our resources are still being taken away by the West. So that is something that we have to stress. However, friends, for leaders like Maada, I do believe that he has to be very careful, okay? In terms of his reputation being destroyed by decisions that he is making, and also by a possible coup, because I do believe the situation in the Sahel region is going to expand throughout Africa. Many leaders are going to be ousted. So perhaps we can say that Maada has disgraced himself and disgraced Sierra Leone, because this is a leader, okay, who led a group that came to power in '92. But also it begs the question, why is it that African leaders come together and build the situation, the platform, okay, the infrastructure for Africa to maintain, to sustain a truly free Africa? Perhaps we are tied to the colonial masters again. Now friends, if you're watching my videos for the first time, or if you're new to this channel, The Echoing Voice, I want you to know that every prominent institution in the world, such as the United Nations, such as the African Union, such as CARICOM, and so on, such as BRICS, does have at least one playlist on this channel. However, friends, every country has at least two playlists on this channel. One is titled the country's name, and the other, domestic, the country's name. And this is how it works. The country's name playlist will feature videos, talks, programs, or ideas that focus specifically on the country's position and relations with countries in its region and institutions in its region and around the world. In this case, we are talking about Sierra Leone. Therefore, the Sierra Leone playlist will feature videos, talks, programs, or ideas that focus on Sierra Leone's position in its region in West Africa, Sierra Leone's positions and interaction with countries and institutions in its region, in Africa, in West Africa, and around the world. Whether we are talking about diplomacy, trade, infrastructure, countries to countries interaction of various sorts, and so on. However, friends, the domestic the country's name playlist will feature videos, talks, ideas, or programs about the domestic situation in Sierra Leone or in the country. In this case, we are talking about Sierra Leone. Therefore, the domestic Sierra Leone playlist will feature videos, talks, programs, or ideas about youth and unemployment, infrastructure, cleaning Sierra Leone, agriculture, poverty, and so on and so on and so on. Now, friends, please tell me what you think, and I really want to know what you think. But friends, I am going to end here. I want to thank you for being a member of the Echoing Voice community, my friends, but most especially and most importantly, or important, I want to thank you a lot for watching the Echoing Voice. Peace, my friends. Peace.